Jason slowly opened his eyes, feeling the sun rays coming through the bedroom window gently caress his face. He stretched lazily in bed, trying to prolong those last moments of drowsiness before facing another day. Gradually, sounds and aromas from downstairs began to awaken his senses. The smell of freshly brewed coffee invaded his nostrils, making his stomach growl in anticipation. He got up and went down the stairs, following the inviting aroma. Upon reaching the kitchen door, he paused for a moment, observing the scene before him. There she was, with her back to him, stirring something on the stove. Her long brown hair fell in soft waves down her back, and she hummed softly as she moved gracefully around the kitchen. Jason stood there, admiring her in silence with a silly smile on his lips. He felt his heart overflowing with love and gratitude for having her in his life. As if sensing his presence, she turned around and their eyes met. The smile that lit up her face made Jason fall in love even more. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she said with affection in her voice. Jason took a few steps towards her, eager to hug her and smell her perfume. However, as he got closer, an intense light began to blur his vision. The outlines of the kitchen and the woman he loved became increasingly hazy until Jason awoke with a start, feeling his heart racing. He looked around, disoriented for a few moments until he realized he was alone in his room. He sighed deeply, running his hands over his face. It was another dream of that same mysterious woman who had populated his nights for so many years. At 30, Jason had already gotten used to this routine. For at least a decade, he had been regularly dreaming of that woman. He didn't know who she was or where she came from, but in his dreams, he always had the absolute certainty that he loved her deeply. As he got up and prepared for another workday, Jason couldn't stop thinking about the dream and the emptiness he felt waking up alone. He remembered a conversation he had with his grandmother shortly before she passed away. His grandparents had a solid marriage for 60 years and were only separated by his grandmother's death. "Jason, throughout your life, you'll meet many women, some good, others not so good, but follow your heart. Your heart will guide you to the woman of your dreams," she once said, with that wise and loving look that only grandmothers have. At the time, Jason was too young to fully understand the meaning of those words. But now, years later, they seemed to echo in his mind with renewed strength. Over the years, Jason had a few relationships. He met incredible women, with whom he shared special moments. But there was always something missing, a deeper connection he couldn't explain. The dreams of the mysterious woman seemed to haunt his romantic decisions. He constantly questioned whether he should ignore these nocturnal visions and commit to someone real. But he always felt that he hadn't yet found the right person. Jason's mother, unaware of her son's recurring dreams, always insisted that he should start thinking about getting married. "You've always loved being with family. You adore your nephews and nieces. Don't you think it's time to start your own family?" she would often ask, concerned about her son's happiness. Jason understood his mother's concern. He really loved being with family and dreamed of having his own one day. But something inside him kept him from fully committing. It was as if he were waiting for someone specific, someone he hadn't yet met in the real world, only in his dreams. Recently, Jason began to feel tired of waiting. He started thinking that maybe he was being foolish to believe that one day he would find the woman of his dreams. "I'll find a good woman and get married. I'll learn to love her. This idea of finding the love of my life is something just for the movies," he thought, trying to convince himself that these dreams were just a fantasy that was trapping him in an illusion. That night, exhausted after a long day of work, Jason fell asleep quickly. Once again, he dreamed of the mysterious woman. This time they were in a large and lush garden. The sky was a deep blue, dotted with white fluffy clouds. The scent of the flowers filled the air, creating a magical and romantic atmosphere. She was there, more radiant than ever, smiling at him with that look that made his heart melt. Jason felt a wave of happiness and relief upon seeing her. It was like coming home after a long journey. He started walking towards her, eager to touch her, to embrace her. But then suddenly, she turned and ran towards a maze of tall, well-trimmed hedges that appeared out of nowhere. Jason, surprised, ran after her. He could hear her melodious laughter echoing between the green walls of the maze, as if she was playing hide-and-seek with him. "Wait!" Jason shouted, running faster and faster, turning into endless corridors, always hearing her laughter but never able to reach her. Frustration began to take over him. Why was she running away? Why couldn't he find her? Jason woke up abruptly, feeling irritated and confused. The dream seemed like a cruel metaphor for his love life. Always chasing something that seemed within reach, but in the end, always slipping through his fingers. He looked at the clock and realized he was late for work. Muttering under his breath, he jumped up and got ready in a rush. While driving to the office, Jason made a decision. He no longer wanted to know about those dreams. He was tired of living based on a fantasy. It was time to face reality and move on with his life. Reaching the building where he worked, Jason saw that the elevator was about to go up. He ran as fast as he could, hopeful that someone would hold the door for him. To his relief, a delicate hand prevented the doors from closing completely. "Thank you," Jason whispered, still breathless from the run, as he entered the elevator. When he looked up to properly thank the person who had held the door, he felt as if the ground had disappeared from under his feet. There, right in front of him, she was. The woman of his dreams, exactly as he saw her every night. The same expressive eyes, the same gentle smile, the same aura of light that seemed to emanate from her. Jason was paralyzed, unable to articulate any words. His heart was beating so hard that he was sure everyone in the elevator could hear it. "Are you okay?" the woman asked, noticing Jason's fixed gaze and bewildered expression. He could only nod affirmatively, still unable to find his voice. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind at once. How was this possible? Was he dreaming again? But everything seemed so real, so vivid. Before Jason could recover from the initial shock, the elevator stopped and the woman got off. He watched her leave, observing the doors close, feeling as if he was watching the scene in slow motion. The elevator continued to climb to the floor where Jason worked. Still dazed by the unlikely encounter, he went down and walked to his desk, collapsing into the chair. His gaze was lost in the void, his mind trying to process what had just happened. Jason, are you okay?" asked a colleague, noticing his altered state. It was then that Jason came back to himself, realizing where he was and what he should be doing. But a realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. He hadn't even noticed which floor the woman had gotten off on. He didn't know her name, nor if she worked in that building. The only thing he knew for sure was that she existed. She was real. In the days that followed, Jason found himself on a mission. He scoured every floor of that enormous corporate building, trying to describe the woman and asking if anyone knew her. To his frustration, no one seemed to recognize the description he gave. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Jason felt like he was in that dream where the woman was in the maze. He couldn't reach her, no matter how hard he tried. The weeks went by, and he oscillated between the hope of meeting her again and the discouragement of thinking he might have imagined everything. This incessant search began to affect his work and personal life. His colleagues noticed that he seemed distracted, always looking around as if searching for someone. His family started to worry about his erratic behavior. But Jason couldn't explain. How could he say he was looking for a woman he had seen in his dreams for years and finally met in real life, only to lose her again? A month after the encounter in the elevator, Jason was sitting in a small diner near his workplace. It was late afternoon, and he was lost in thought about the tasks he had to do the next day when he felt a gentle touch on his shoulder. "Sorry to bother you, but you look familiar. Have we met somewhere before?" said a sweet and melodious voice that made his heart leap. When Jason turned around, he saw her. She was there, as beautiful as in his dreams, with the same captivating smile that enchanted him every night. For a moment, he was speechless. fearing that if he spoke, she would disappear like a mirage. "Yes," he finally managed to say, his voice trembling slightly. "We've met before." Her face lit up with recognition. "Oh, you were the guy in the elevator. So that's where we met." This time, Jason didn't hesitate. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away again. "Let me thank you for holding the elevator for me that day. Would you like a coffee?" he offered, praying internally that she would accept. To his delight, she smiled and nodded. "Sure, I would love to." As she sat down, Jason finally had the opportunity to really look at her, to absorb every detail of her face, of her presence. It was surreal how she was exactly like in his dreams, from the sparkle in her eyes to the way she slightly tilted her head when she smiled. "By the way, my name is Madison," she introduced herself, extending her hand. "Jason," he replied, feeling an electric current run through his body when their hands touched. The following hours passed in the blink of an eye. Jason and Madison talked about everything and nothing, laughed at silly jokes and shared stories from their lives. It was as if they had known each other for years, so natural and easy was the dialogue between them. Madison worked at a company in the same building as Jason, but on a different floor. She explained that she rarely used the main elevator, preferring the stairs for exercise, which explained why Jason had never met her in his frantic search. As they talked, Jason felt his heart expand. Every smile, every gesture from Madison confirmed what he already knew deep down. She was the woman he had been waiting for his entire life. At the end of the night, when they exchanged contacts and said goodbye, Madison said something that made Jason smile inwardly. "Wow, it doesn't even feel like we just met. It feels like we've known each other for a long time." "Yes, we have already met in my dreams," thought Jason, but he just smiled in response. As he walked back home, Jason felt light, as if he were floating. He remembered his grandmother's advice and felt a wave of gratitude. He had followed his heart, and his heart had led him to Madison. In the months that followed, Jason and Madison grew closer and closer. Each meeting, each conversation, each moment shared only confirmed what Jason had known since the first moment. She was his soulmate, the woman of his dreams who now had become part of his reality. A year after that meeting at the diner, Jason took Madison to the city's botanical garden. As they walked hand in hand among the colourful flowers and majestic trees, he couldn't help but notice how the scene resembled the dream he had so many times. Stopping in front of a beautiful arch covered with roses, Jason turned to Madison, holding her hands and looking deeply into her eyes. "Madison," he began, feeling his heart race. "There's something I need to tell you. Before I met you, I dreamt of you. For years you appeared in my dreams. I didn't know who you were or if you really existed, but my heart always knew it was you I was waiting for." Madison looked at him with a mix of surprise and emotion. "Jason, that's incredible. You know, since I met you, I've had this constant feeling of déjà vu, as if we had lived 1,000 lives together." Jason smiled, feeling tears of happiness well up in his eyes. "My grandmother once told me to follow my heart, that it would lead me to the woman of my dreams. And she was right." Then, slowly, Jason knelt down, taking a small velvet box out of his pocket. "Madison, you are the dream that came true, the love I have waited for my whole life. Will you marry me?" With tears in her eyes and a radiant smile, Madison replied, "Yes, of course I will." As they embraced and kissed, under the arch of roses and the blue sky, Jason felt that he was finally complete. The maze of his dreams had come to an end, and he had found not only the love of his life, but also himself. That night, Jason did not dream of the mysterious woman. He didn't need to anymore. She was there, sleeping peacefully by his side, her hand entwined with his. The future that once seemed hazy was now clear and bright ahead of him, filled with promises of love, family, and happiness. Jason fell asleep with a smile on his lips, grateful for having followed his heart, and for finding the courage to believe that dreams can sometimes come true. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.